The battered tickets rolled into the remnants of what had once been a makeshift Polish field command post. Smoke still curled from overturned crates and splintered wood. Orlik climbed out, rifle slung over his shoulder, and surveyed the ruin. Only the charred remains of a radio mast and a shattered desk remained. No sign of Lieutenant Helena Kowalczyk. Jazio and Merrick scrambled from the bustle, eyes sharp. "She was supposed to meet us here," Merrick said, voice hollow. He kicked at a scorch plank. This was her frequency. He tapped his headset. Only static answered. Orlik picked up a singed photograph of Helena pinned under a broken chair leg. In the fading light, her confident smile stared back. He tightened his jaw. Either she was here and got dragged off, or she never came at all. Doubt gnawed at him. Had her precise intel been a ruse? Had she led them into the church ambush? Jazio rummaged through scattered papers. Encrypted schedules, patrol rotations. Everything matched the broadcasts. He held up a page listing German unit movements that aligned perfectly with their escape. Then why wreck this place? He let the page flutter to the ground. A distant rumble shook the ground. Soviet armor, unexpected, unannounced, tore through the field beyond. The same fate that befell Helena's outpost might await them if they stayed. Orlik's mind raced. If Helena betrayed them, she would be long gone. If she died, they would never know why. Either way, the fragile trust they placed in her lay shattered. He stamped a boot onto the radio mast's jagged base. "We can't wait here." He turned to Merrick. "Patch into civilian channels. See if any local partisans have seen her." Merrick nodded, disappearing into the shadows with the portable receiver. Orlik exchanged a look with Jazio. "We move at dusk. We need answers, but we also need ammo. If Helena survived, she's our only hope of finding more 20mm rounds." Jazio tapped the autocannon lovingly. "And our only hope of taking on that Panzer again." As Orlik climbed back into the driver's seat, Merrick returned shakes of static and breathless whispers. No word on Helena. A partisan band heard gunfire near here at dawn and silence. His eyes glistened. They fear she was captured. Orlik nodded once, hard. "Then we become her rescue party." He stared at the horizon, where storm clouds gathered. Trust was a rare commodity in war, but faith, in comradeship, in mercy, would drive them forward. Even if it broke them, they would see this through. Late afternoon light slanted through the trees as the TKS trudged along a forest track. Orlik drove with grim focus. Jazio kept watch through periscope. Merrick sat huddled in the bustle, headphones glued to his ears, listening for Helena or any clue to her fate. Without warning, rifles cracked from a concealed German patrol, resting in camouflage glades. Tracer rounds spat across the road, gouging the tankettes' thin armor. Orlik slammed the brakes, glass cracking in the periscope viewport. "Ambush!" he shouted. Jazio twisted the turret toward the muzzle flashes, firing a quick 5-round burst that cut down 2 riflemen. But the Germans were prepared. A squad flanked the left track and lobbed a grenade. The blast rocked the TKS, throwing Orlik against the hatch rim. Metal screeched as the left tread caught on a hidden stake. The tankette ground to a halt. "We're pinned!" Merrick yelled. He scrambled to free Otto Meyer's bonds, both men tumbling into Jazio's path. Gunfire rattled the bustle rim. The wounded corporal's eyes widened, but Jazio shoved him aside and braced for the worst. Orlik crawled onto the hull, rifle aimed. He met a German NCO stare through the trees. The man sneered and raised a pistol. Before the shot could ring out, Merrick dove forward, tripping the German and sending both crashing. A shot reverberated. Mark's leg spasmed, a red bloom on his trousers. Jazio swung the autocannon's breech open and thrust it around. The echoing boom cleared the trees, forcing the Germans back. Under cover of fire, Orlik clambered in, revving the engine, but the left track lay twisted, useless. The Germans pressed forward, confident. Their laughter echoed through the glade. With a cry, they advanced on foot. Orlik stared at Jazio. "We can't fight them all," he gasped. Merrick, face ashen but defiant, shouted, "Run! Get to higher ground!" They abandoned the TKS. Orlik propped Jazio's arm over his shoulders. Merrick hobbled beside them. Behind, rifle fire kicked up dirt. The tankette's engine coughed and died. They sprinted into the trees, leaves slapping their helmets. Each footfall pounded like a war drum. Behind them, the cursed hunter lay still, and only echoes of gunfire marked their passage. Shadows gathered under the forest canopy as Orlik, Jazio, and the wounded Merrick stumbled through undergrowth. Jazio supported Mark's weight. Each step was agony. Orlik led, back to the ruined church. It was their last defensible point, and Helena's trail might lie there. Distant voices carried on the wind. German patrols combing the woods. Orlik signaled them down. Hide. Wait for night. He slid to a halt by an ancient oak, chest heaving. We need to get the TKS running again, and quickly. It's our only chance to break through. Jazio spat. We can't leave Merrick behind. He winced as Merrick slumped. The corporal, Otto Meyer, crawled forward. I can help, he rasped. I've repaired worse. Orlik hesitated, then knelt beside Otto. The wounded German paled, but nodded. Fine. You're covered. Under moonlight, they returned to the immobilized tankette. Its tracks were mangled, but the engine's heart still beat faintly. Otto removed a British-made toolkit from his pack. Let me, he insisted. Jazio held a lantern. Orlik assessed the damage. Within minutes, Otto rerouted a broken track pin and jury-rigged the idler wheel. The TKS shuddered to life. Remarkable, Orlik murmured. Otto collapsed to one knee. Exhausted, he slid into the bustle. Jazio and Orlik helped Merrick inside. Under the low canopy, they lifted Merrick into the driver's seat. Orlik at controls. The tankette groaned and then purred as they reversed into night. Footsteps crashed behind them, German rifles shouldering into position. Orlik jammed the throttle, and the TKS lurched backward, tracks carving into leaf litter. Jazio peered to the periscope. 2 riflemen raised their weapons. He fired a defensive burst that bit into the trees. Splinters flew. They crested a nameless ridge and saw Helena's radio mast. Tilted but intact, Orlik pointed. There, our rally point. He veered the hull, engine rasping. The underbrush closed in, but the TKS slipped through like a serpent. Bullets thudded into the rear armor, but they held. As dawn's pale light chased away the night, they reached the mast. No sign of Helena, only her fallen headset, wires torn. Merrick, sweat and blood streaked across his face, stumbled out. She wasn't here, he whispered. His voice cracked. Orlik helped him to the ground. Then she's close. He turned back to the TKS. We rest, then finish this. As the machine's engine idled in the half-light, they realized their rescue had only deepened the hunt. For Helena, for Mark's faith, and for the final reckoning with the Panzer. They huddled beneath Helena's mast as birds rose in ragged flocks overhead. Jazio cleaned and reloaded the autocannon one last time. Only one clip remained, 5 precious rounds. Merrick sat against the mast base, bandages soaked but spirit intact. Otto leaned against a crate, exhausted but alive. Orlik traced chalk on a wooden board. The Panzer's likely patrol routes, fields of fire, and one narrow draw between 2 hills. We can't outgun it. We must outmaneuver it, he said, voice low. Our goal isn't to destroy it outright. That's impossible. We need to immobilize it, then force their crew to abandon ship. His finger tapped the chalk line leading to the draw. Here, in the draw, its turret can't traverse without exposing its rear. Jazio studied the line. 1 shot to the turret ring will jam the top-heavy steel. Then 5 more rounds through the side armor, ideally at the transmission gearbox. It'll stall. He exhaled. But we have to get within 20 meters. Merrick closed his eyes, and will be a sitting duck. His voice broke. Why not retreat? Find safety east of the river. Orlik met his gaze. Because they're coming. The Russians, the Germans, Poland will be ground under their tracks. He laid a hand on Mark's shoulder. We owe our people one last stand. Otto stirred. Allow me to coordinate our 2 remaining tankettes, he offered. I know where an abandoned TKS lies by the Old Mill Road. We can set a pincer, 1 on each side of the draw. His voice was faint but steady. Mark's eyes flew open. A 2-pronged trap, he murmured. Orlik nodded. At dawn, We lure the Panzer into the draw with dummy flares and tracks. Jazio and I take the north approach. Merrick and Otto the south. When it's in range, we strike simultaneously. It'll never see both of us. He drew 3 arcs on the board. We can do this. Silence settled, heavy with possibility. Jazio loaded the last clip into his vest. Merrick wrapped fresh rags around his leg. Otto checked his pistol. Each man steeled himself. Orlik crouched by the mast and prayed, not for success, but for the strength to face what was to come. When the first light of 4 a.m. threatened the horizon, they climbed aboard their tankettes. Only one command remained, for Poland. And with that, the Phantom Hunter led his dwindling crew into the valley's maw, 5 rounds their hope against a steel giant. A thunderhead rolled in from the west, blotting out stars and drenching the land in sheets of rain. Visibility dropped to mere meters. Thunder rattled the thin hull of Orlik's tankettes as he inched into the choke point between the hills. Lightning flared, illuminating the opposite slope where Jazio's tankette waited, turret angled toward the draw's mouth. Merrick and Otto slipped along the southern flank. Engines hushed so only the rain masked them. Orlik guided his vehicle into position, tires sinking into mud. He swallowed cold fear. 5 heartbeats. He told himself, 5 rounds, 5 opportunities. On the ridge, the Panzer IV lumbered into the draw, its commander drawn by dummy tracer lines Orlik had fired the night before. As the beast's front hull crossed the threshold, Jazio tapped Orlik's hatch rim. Now! Orlik yanked the breech open and fired the first round directly at the turret ring. The explosion of steel on steel rang louder than thunder. Sparks sprayed. The massive turret shuddered, halted at a violent angle. The German gun maneuver struggled, stuck. A shell from the Panzer's hull gun recoiled, tearing a smear of mud across Orlik's vision port. He cursed, relentless, and blasted the gearbox area with the next rounds. Smoke erupted from below the Panzer's rear, gears grinding to a halt. From the south, Merrick and Otto poured their clip into the immobilized flank, rounds punching holes in the transmission cover. The tank's engine stuttered once, twice, then died with a metallic groan. Rain pelted the silent monument of war. Inside the Panzer, lights flickered. German crew members scrambled, helmets tumbling. Orlik and Jazio advanced. Rain sluiced across the battlefield as they leveled weapons at the hatch. Orlik's hand hovered over the trigger, but hesitation froze him. The soldiers staring back were boys. Thunder cracked overhead. Jazio's finger twitched. Marik's voice crackled through the radio. We've got you surrounded. Surrender now. Silence reigned. Then the hatch creaked open. A pale figure climbed out, hands raised. In that instant, the rain washed away the fury, leaving only questions of mercy and justice. As the downpour intensified, Orlik realized their victory was more than the destruction of a steel giant. It was proof that even the smallest flame could pierce the darkest storm. Yet as the Germans were led away in shackles, Orlik's gaze drifted east, toward an uncertain horizon where new battles loomed and hope hung by a thread. The rain drowned the final echoes of war's thunder, yet in the hush that followed, 3 men in a tiny tank hunter understood the true cost of triumph and the fragile beauty of survival. Rain-slicked earth clung to the immobilized Panzer, for like tar as Orlik's trio approached under guard. The German crew, 5 men in muddy gray uniforms, stood clustered before their smoking hulk with defeat etched on their faces. Orlik stepped forward, pistol slung in one hand and his own soaked cap in the other. Behind him, Jazio cradled the 20mm autocannon's discarded clips. Merrick leaned on the turret ring, exhaustion and relief warring in his gaze. Otto Meyer, bloodstained but steady, translated. They surrender, he announced. Spielen Sie dead, Herr Oberleutnant. The German commander, Lieutenant Becker, raised a trembling salute. We yield to you, he said haltingly, voice thick with shock. Orders were to hold at all costs, but our tank is disabled. We have no fight left. His men shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the draw's lip, where Soviet columns now cluster on the far ridge. Orlik studied Becker's face, rain sluicing down its contours. In that moment, the line between victor and victim blurred. You will march eastward at dawn, Orlik said quietly, "Under flag of truce. Your men will walk unarmed. Any sign of treachery, and this mercy ends." He gestured at the TKS. "Take them into the village of Nawawise. They will be held until further orders." Becker's relief was palpable. "Danke." He trailed off, struggling for words. Otto dipped his head, urging them forward. The German crew relinquished their sidearms and walked toward the draw, boots squelching the mire, while Orlik's small force trailed behind like shepherds guiding stray sheep. As the last salvo of Polish scouts' rifles echoed from the ridge, funeral volleys to mark a victory dearly bought, the rain began to lighten. Orlik stood by the disabled Panzer's flank and watched the prisoners file past. Merrick joined him. "Was that right?" he asked, voice barely audible over dripping water. Orlik's gaze remained fixed on the departing figures. "Mercy doesn't weaken us," he replied. "It defines us. We gave them life instead of death." But the earth beneath them was soaked with more than rain. Blood, oil, and mud coalesced into a grim testament to war's costs. Orlik turned away, wiping rain from his brow. "We have no time to linger," he said. "The Soviets won't forget our deed." Merrick and Jazio exchanged uneasy looks. They climbed into the TKS, its engine reluctant but still alive. As they rumbled away from the crippled Panzer, Orlik allowed himself a fleeting hope. That one act of humanity might kindle something brighter amid the ruin. Yet, on the horizon, new thunderclouds gathered, ominous heralds that their next trial loomed closer than ever. By midday, they reached the crossroads at Nawawise, where the Germans would be processed. A handful of Polish cavalry and scouts waited, their horses stamping to shake off rain-soaked blankets. The prisoners, the Lieutenant Becker and his 4 crewmen, stood lined beneath tattered poplars. Polish officers barked orders. Scribes took notes in muddy logbooks. Orlik parked the TKS beside an overturned supply wagon. Otto Meyer disembarked, ready to testify on behalf of his former comrades. Jazio and Merrick stayed with the prisoners, ensuring no one fled. The rain had ceased, but the sky remained slate-gray, as if reflecting the weight on Orlik's conscience. The processing was swift. Spanish volunteers from the international brigades, now attached to Polish lines, escorted the Germans to makeshift cells in a nearby farmhouse. As the last prisoner was led away, Becker turned to Orlik and offered a stiff nod. Their eyes met, between them, an unspoken understanding of soldiers bound by circumstance and shades of honor. Orlik lingered, examining the muddy wheel ruts that bisected the crossroads. These tracks, from Soviet tanks, German panzers, and Polish tankettes, spoke of collision courses and shifting alliances. He recalled Otto's warning from weeks before. War is never a clash of two sides. It is an endless dance of gray. He realized now how true that was. Merrick approached, map in hand. "HQ orders us north," he said, voice hoarse. "They need us at Lublin to shore up defenses against the Red Army. They say the front there is collapsing." Orlik traced a route on the map. Winding roads through flooded fields, villages burned to husks, and bristling enemy patrols. "Our march continues," he said. "But first, resupply." He surveyed the crossroads. The abandoned wagon held ration crates, then crates of spare parts, fuel lines, track links, and a cache of 20mm rounds. Jazio's eyes lit up, enough to keep the cannon firing for 2 more encounters. He slung a crate onto the bustle. Merrick loaded boxes of rations. Orlik found a radio technician's satchel with fresh batteries and a cipher keybook. He nodded approvingly. "This will buy us time and maybe allies." He tucked the code book into his tunic. As they prepared to depart, a rider thundered up on a pale gray mare. The courier, a young woman clad in a courier's coat, face determined, saluted. "Commander Orlik," she panted. "Special dispatch from Warsaw. You're requested before General Rommel at the Eastern Command Liaison. They await your report." Orlik exchanged a glance with Jazio and Merrick. The stakes had just risen. No longer a phantom hunter operating in the countryside, but a witness to strategic decisions at the highest levels. He nodded. "We move immediately." The TKS fired its engine to life, wheels spinning mud into splashes. Orlik climbed into the driver's seat, Merrick in the bustle, and Jazio at the autocannon. As they rolled away from the crossroads, Orlik gazed back, toward the farmhouse, the poplars, and the path they'd carved through history. Ahead lay new roads, new foes, and the uncertain promise of battles yet to come. Night cloaked their approach to Lublin in thick fog. The TKS cut through the haze like a phantom, headlights dimmed to avoid detection. Orlik navigated winding lanes under the courier's guidance, following lanterns hung by local militia to mark friendly passages. The city's outskirts were choked with refugees, carts piled high with possessions, faces etched in despair. At a ruined manor repurposed as command liaison, Polish officers in crisp uniforms bustled beneath flickering lamps. General Julius Rommel, a grizzled figure with steel-gray mustaches, stood over a map table, his eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Orlik saluted. The general returned it with a grave nod. "Commander," Rommel said, voice low, "your report on the Panzer IV-B and its disabling is invaluable, but the Soviets press harder every hour. We must know, can these TKS tank hunters hold the line?" He gestured at the map, where red icons advanced in serried formations toward the Vistula. Orlik laid out the facts. The immobilization technique, the vulnerability of the turret ring, and the success of coordinated flanking attacks. He described the mercy granted to the German crew and its potential propaganda value. Jazio and Merrick supplemented his account, detailing their dwindling ammunition and the importance of resupply. Rommel listened, fingers drumming. "Your deeds have inspired entire regiments," he said at last. "But we need more than inspiration. We need weapons." He turned to a communications officer. "Transmit this to our allies in Britain and France. Detail the TKS modifications and the tactics we've used." The officer nodded, tapping a teleprinter. Orlik watched as the message scrolled out. Steel-clad hope scribed onto paper tape, destined for distant capitals. He felt a surge of pride, yet tempered by dread. Would help arrive in time? Would their tactics be adopted before the Soviets overwhelmed them? The general folded the map. "Rest tonight. At dawn, you're to lead a convoy of reinforcements to Sandomierz. They include 3 more TKS tankettes and a supply train. Take care. Enemy patrols are heavy along the route." Orlik saluted. "Yes, sir." As he turned, Merrick pulled him aside. "Sir, I intercepted another transmission. German command notes that you spared Lieutenant Becker's crew. They're furious. They call it cowardice. They vow revenge." Marek's face grew pale. "They'll hunt us personally." Orlik nodded, steeling himself. Mercy always had a price. He squared his shoulders and returned to the convoy's staging area, where crews prepared their vehicles. He climbed into his tikis, heart pounding with the weight of responsibility and the echo of his own words. For Poland. As the engines roared at dawn, the last transmission printed its final dot. And somewhere beyond the fog, distant guns began to blaze, heralds of the next trial on this war's unending road. The convoys snaked along narrow country roads lined by battered fences and shattered cottages. 6 TKS tankettes pressed forward, half hidden under tarpaulins and low-hanging branches. Supply wagons creeped behind, laden with ammunition, fuel, and medical stores. Orlik led, his TKS's headlight off but side marker glowing faintly red. As they passed a charred orchard, the first salvo rang out, German artillery pounding from concealed positions in the woods. Orlik's TKS shuddered under the blast as shells plowed into gullies on either side. He halted the convoy behind a knoll. "Take cover," he ordered. Drivers ducked. Crews huddled behind steel hulls as debris showered around them. Jazio peered through the periscope. Elevation seems high. They're targeting the supply wagons. A fresh shell uprooted a cart, sending crates tumbling. "We need to suppress that battery," Jazio shouted. Orlik nodded. He keyed the radio. "Detach 2 tankettes. Flank east and engage. The rest hold position." Under Orlik's direction, 2 TKS crews broke right, engines idling to avoid detection. Shell splinters chipped paint as they crept through the orchard's remains. Orlik counted his breath. 1, 2. Then he gave the signal. Jazio squeezed the trigger of the 20mm autocannon, and tracer rounds stitched across the rising smoke. The artillery rounds fell short as crews scrambled to man their guns. Merrick fired his machine gun from the bustle, laying suppressive fire. The Germans returned, rifles and MG-42s rattling through trees. The flanking TKS tankettes roared from cover, firing bursts that pockmarked the battery's position. Within minutes, the German guns fell silent. Back at the knoll, supply wagons righted themselves. Drivers cleaned spent shell casings from their boots. Orlik surveyed the path ahead, a bridge over the Sand River, crucial for reaching Sandomierz. But the spans were damaged, stonework cracked by shell blasts. A dozen Polish sappers emerged, tools in hand. Their leader saluted. "Commander Orlik, we can jury-rig the bridge for light vehicles, but only one TKS can cross at a time, and the load limit is perilous." He nodded toward the damaged arches, water roaring beneath. "We'll need cover fire." Orlik assessed the risk. Each TKS weighed barely 3 tons. The bridge might hold, but enemy snipers and artillery could catch them mid-span. He drew his revolver and cocked it. "I'll lead," he said. "Cover me." Jazio and Merrick took positions, pistol and machine gun at the ready. One by one, the tankettes rolled onto the trembling planks, tracers arcing overhead. Orlik held his breath as his TKS inched forward. Wood groaned. Stones crackled. At the midpoint, a shell slammed into the near arch. Dust and masonry rained down. Orlik gunned the engine, racing to the far bank as the bridge buckled behind him. Safe on solid ground, he turned. The bridge remained intact, miracle born of speed and faith. The convoy crossed in quick succession, echo quiet beneath the dawn sky. Orlik climbed from the hatch, mud splattered and soaked in sweat. In that moment, he realized war was not just steel and bullets. It was courage under crushing weight, and the fragile threads that held broken lines together. Beyond the sand, dense forest pressed in like a living wall. Sunlight filtered through towering pines, the path narrowing to barely a cart track. Orlik led the convoy deeper, wary of ambush. Otto Meyer rode in one of the tankettes, his uniform replaced by civilian clothes, an uneasy true symbol. At dusk, they reached a clearing littered with exploded shells and abandoned equipment, a graveyard of previous skirmishes. Crews exchanged uneasy glances. Jazio scouted ahead on foot, returning moments later with grave news. A Soviet armored car patrol lies in wait half-kilometer north. They're on edge, no friendly markings. Orlik tapped his lip thoughtfully. The British-supplied vehicles bore Polish insignia, but the Soviets were known to shoot first and verify later. He weighed options: detour through thicker woods, risking mines, or hold position until dark and slip past. "We'll wait," he decided, "but keep engines off. Not a light in sight." Night fell like a shroud. Orlik and his men crouched behind their tankettes, the forest breathing around them. Merrick huddled over map under a small lantern, plotting the bypass. Jazio loaded his pistol, fingers twitching. Otto paced restlessly. Suddenly, distant engines growled. The Soviet armored cars rolled into view, headlights ablaze. Orlik's heart pounded. Detection meant battle or surrender. He keyed his radio to the Polish code channel. "Patrol approaching. Stand by." As the vehicles neared the clearing, Orlik fired a single green signal flare, a prearranged Polish recognition sign. The light bloomed like a ghostly flower, painting the trees emerald. The Soviets skidded to a halt, engines idling. Their commander, a young lieutenant, stepped out, rifle across his chest. He slipped out a map and compared coordinates by the flare's glow. For a heart-stopping moment, silence reigned. Then the lieutenant lowered his rifle. He offered a curt nod. "You have clearance to pass." Relief crashed through Orlik like a wave. The Soviets extinguished their lights and melted back into the forest. Orlik slid onto the TKS hull, shouldering exhaustion. "We're through," he whispered. Jazio exhaled. Merrick slumped against the turret rim, and Otto allowed himself a tired grin. As they resumed their crawl toward Sandomierz, dawn's first birdsong drifted through the pines. Orlik gazed ahead at the infinite green, and beyond that, the war's next chapter. In the forest of ghosts, they had survived, by mercy, by cunning, and by small sparks of recognition. But the road ahead remained shadowed with uncertainty, and each mile carried the weight of a nation's hope. Dawn's pale light revealed the outskirts of a deserted hamlet. Riztoka, its clay-roofed cottages intact but abandoned. Doors hung on broken hinges. Windows gaped, and the only sound was the whisper of a cold breeze through empty courtyards. Orlik halted the TKS at the village edge, emerald map in hand. He scanned each building with a soldier's eye, searching for footprints, not ghosts. "Too clean," Merrick murmured, stepping out and kicking at the dust. No signs of struggle or looting. Jazio crept ahead, periscope raised, sweeping over silent gardens where chickens roamed free of human fear. Otto Meyer, leaning heavily on Jazio's shoulder, sniffed the morning air. No scent of wood smoke, he observed. Villagers would have lit fires before fleeing. His German accent was rough, but his instincts were sharp. Orlik circled the central square, eyes flicking from house to house. Then he spotted it, a small cross inscribed on a doorframe, half hidden by creeping ivy, an improvised signal used by partisans. He traced its chalk outline. "This is a safe house," he whispered. They left in a hurry. Inside the largest cottage, they discovered a tattered ledger on a heavy oak table. Orlik rifled its pages. Code names, rendezvous times, a crude sketch of a nearby evacuation point. Partisans moved out, he concluded. They left intelligence and possibly supplies. Jazio pried open a chest and found tins of preserved meat and half-used bandages. "Medical kits," he said, "and rations for 4 days." Merrick exhaled, just enough to keep us going. He gathered the supplies, stacking them into canvas bags. As they prepared to leave, Otto paused at the doorway, staring down the empty lane. "Someone knew we'd come here," he said softly, "or they feared the TKS hunter would follow their trail." His voice trailed off, and he crossed himself, a gesture that startled even Orlik. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying distant gunfire from the south. Orlik mounted the hatch and peered toward the sound. "Stay ready," he ordered. "We take what we can, then move on. This village's silence tells us more than words ever could." With fresh supplies loaded, the TKS rumbled out of Riztoka. Behind them, the empty cottages seemed to watch, their windows like hollow eyes. Orlik felt the weight of unseen watchers, partisans, enemies, or both, tracking their ghostly passage through the war. They'd barely cleared the village boundary when battle thundered to life around them. Hidden partisan fighters, emboldened by the morning's light, had sprung an ambush on a Soviet armored column pressing westward. 26 tanks skidded over churned earth. Infantry in black and green smeared uniforms vaulted into trenches. Caught between two fronts, Orlik's trio found themselves in the kill zone. Shells plowed the fields, tracer fire arced overhead, and screams mingled with machine gun staccato. The TKS skidded to a stop beneath a shattered oak. Jazio scrambled to the hatch, scanning friend from foe through periscope crosshairs. Poles versus Soviets. Jazio shouted, "We're in the middle." The partisans mistook the Polish-marked TKS for Soviet armor and trained their rifles on them. Soviet gunners, seeing only another steel vehicle, aimed to crush both sides. Orlik fired a warning shot skyward. "Hold fire. Polish TKS, stand down," he roared through a megaphone. His voice was swallowed by explosions. Soldiers on both sides faltered, seeking to identify friend or foe. In that instant, Merrick hurled a white flag banner out of the turret. The tricolor of Poland. But clarity came too late. A Soviet T-26 gunner opened fire, rounds punching to the farmhouse wall beside them. Orlik twisted the wheel, bringing the autocannon to bear. Jazio roared back with suppressive fire at the T-28XS tracks, jamming its mobility. Amid the chaos, a small child dashed from the farmhouse doorway, eyes wide with terror. Jazio's blood ran cold. "Cover me," he barked. He vaulted from the bustle and sprinted across the cratered courtyard, bullets chipping masonry around him. With one arm, he scooped the child into his chest, dragging her to safety behind the TKS. Partisans recognized their flag and ceased fire. Soviet crews, now targeted by Polish scouts who had arrived unseen, pulled back. In the sudden hush, Orlik climbed from the hatch, rifle raised. He found the farmer from Pociecha standing on the farmhouse steps, hat in hand, face ashen. "Why?" Orlik demanded. "Why lead us here?" The farmer's knees buckled. "They told me if I didn't guide them, they'd kill my family," he stammered. I didn't know this would happen." His eyes darted between the TKS crew and the rescued child. Orlik's heart thudded. The crossfire had almost killed them all, but the farmer's betrayal had nearly destroyed an innocent life. He lowered his rifle. "You will atone," he said quietly. "Your guidance cost blood today." The farmer wept wordlessly. As dawn broke over the smoking fields, 3 armies receded from the standstill. Orlik gathered his crew. "We move at once," he ordered. "The child ride with us." With that, the TKS rumbled away, carrying hope through the aftermath of crossfire and betrayal. Night approached as they reached a fractured railway bridge spanning a marsh. The child, wrapped in Jazio's coat, slept against Marek's shoulder. The farmer trudged behind, head bowed. Ahead loomed the crossing, damp ties slick with moss and missing planks. Orlik studied the span by lantern light. The rails sagged, rusted beams groaned under weight. "We can't risk the TKS here," he muttered, "but we have no other route." He considered turning back and the threat of capture, but each option spelled doom for the child and his crew. Jazio peeked from the bustle. "We could ferry across in makeshift rafts," he suggested. "Unload the supplies, then tow the tankette." His voice wavered. "But if the enemy patrols catch us," he let the thought trail off. Merrick glanced at the farmer. "And if he leads them straight to us?" he added. The farmer flinched at the accusation. "I swear no more betrayals," he said. "My family is in safe hands." His plea was desperate. Orlik drew a deep breath. "We have 2 choices," he said, voice calm but firm. "Risk the bridge and press on, possibly losing the TKS, but saving the child and our supplies. Or take the long route around, days lost, supplies wasted, and our enemies tracking our every move." He let them ponder the weight of each. Silence settled in the lantern glow. The child stirred, sensing the tension. Jazio closed his eyes. "We risk the bridge," he said. "Speed is our ally." Merrick nodded, squeezing the child's hand. Even the farmer raised his eyes, acceptance flickering. Orlik offered a small, sad smile. "Then we prepare." They unloaded crates, ammo, rations, Otto's toolkit, stacking them in neat piles. Orlik guided the farmer in tying bundles to a raft fashioned from empty barrels and planks. Merrick gathered gear, and Jazio checked the autocannon's barrel and breech. At midnight, they launched the raft. Merrick guided across silent water, lanterns swinging like a heartbeat. The farmer hauled supplies to the far bank. Orlik reversed the TKS onto the bridge, inching forward as Jazio and Merrick watched the planks groan. Halfway across, a thunderous crack split the air. One of the main beams warped under pressure. Orlik jammed the throttle, the tracks churning splinters. Jazio leaned out, firing a warning burst at unseen shadows. Enemy patrol, drawn by the light. "Open fire on the bridge supports." Orlik's face set in determination. "Hold steady," he shouted. The rails buckled. The hull shuddered. At the far edge, splinterwood gave way, but Orlik rocketed the TKS forward, wheels clawing at moss until all 4 tracks found solid ground. He leaped down, rifle ready, as the bridge sagged into marsh with a final groan. Behind him, success glowed in Jazio and Marek's eyes, and terror in the farmer's. Orlik looked back at the ruined span, then to the child who stirred awake. "Choices decide fate," he said softly, "and we have chosen to survive." At dawn, they crested a gentle rise to behold the Vistula River winding silver through the plains. Sandomir's lay beyond, supposed sanctuary and staging point for the Polish defense. But between them and the city stood an open valley, ripe for ambush. Orlik halted the TKS. He placed a hand on the child's head. "Rest here," he said gently. "I'll scout ahead." Jazio and Merrick joined him, Otto and the farmer keeping watch. The morning sun glinted off rippling water and distant roofs. Orlik slipped into the tall grass, binoculars raised. He spotted movement along the far ridge. A German reconnaissance team advancing quietly on motorbikes. Their uniforms were crisp, their weapons sleek. They stopped at an outcrop, scanned the valley, and moved on. Then behind them, he caught the shimmer of a disguised railroad flat car, a hidden 88mm flak gun. Heart pounding, he retreated to the tankettes. "They're here," he whispered. A mobile battery concealed in plain sight. Jazio's eyes narrowed. "We can't outrun that." Merrick chewed his lip. "But we can outthink them." Orlik drew a chalk circle on the turret's armor. The battery's firing arc would cover the valley center. "If we skirt the riverbank, stay under its lee, we can slip past their blind spot." He pointed to a cluster of willows, marking a ford downstream. "We cross there, then sprint into Sandomir's." They loaded the child into the bustle, strapped to Jazio's chest for safety. Orlik rumbled off camera, hugging the river's curve. The German motorbikes reconnoitered overhead, but the TKS's low profile kept them hidden. At the Willow Ford, they climbed onto the riverbed, shallow but slick. Halfway across, the flak battery's trumpet barked. Shells arced over the valley, but the riverbank diverted most shots. One shell splashed uselessly behind them. Jazio gunned the engine, and they surged onto firm ground, leaving smoke and questions in their wake. They sped toward Sandomir's, muzzles singing their defiance. City walls rose ahead, their gates opening as they approached with a polished clank of determined tracks. Soldiers and refugees cheered, offering water and prayers. Orlik exhaled, leaning on the hatch rim as Merrick lifted the child into waiting arms. Jazio tapped the autocannon affectionately. Otto Meyer saluted, tears in his eyes. Even the farmers stood straighter, redeemed by their shared triumph. But as the gates clanged shut behind them, Orlik's gaze drifted eastward toward forests, fields, and shadows where new threats gathered. The Vistula's waters shimmered with promise and peril alike. He pressed a hand to his chest, where the child's heartbeat steadied his own. "War's greatest questions aren't answered with steel," he murmured. "They're whispered by the fates we forge." And though today they had survived, tomorrow's whisper already stirred on the wind, promising that their story, and Poland's, was far from over.